Hey there, Mike here with Feeling Twisty. I'm really glad you're here, as always. And I'm really glad my guest today is here. He's worn many, many hats in his lifetime, more than I can mention. I'm going to read off a few here. Certified leadership coach and business consultant, author, podcaster, YouTuber, speaker, investor, graphic designer, musician, restaurateur, that's fancy, and a nonprofit founder. There's a whole lot more to my guest, so let's dive in and find out Tony Doyle's story. Tony, welcome.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. Before we get started, Feeling Twisty has been my favorite podcast for at least 2 years,
Oh,
and I tell everyone that, and it's an honor to be asked to be on here. So
wow. Thank you, Tony. I appreciate that. That was an unsolicited endorsement. I appreciate it more than you know. Thank you for that.
sure.
You've, I've read over some notes. You sent me some information about you, and thank you for that. You've had an adventurous life this go around. You've done a lot of things. Let's start with what's happening right now. What's going on for you?
How apropos, as Neville would say. Let's start from the end. So a lot is going on right now, and at the same time, nothing. Um, And I say that because I literally do live an adventure and love what I do and only do what I love. So it's definitely a blessing to be able to live that way. So all those things are correct, and 90% of those hats I still wear on occasion. And that's one of the things I talk to some of my clients about is like I don't let go of those other things 100%. I just shift where I'm at in them, and that has made me have multiple streams of income and just so much, fun and excitement, so I give life not only to the lovely, but the lovely pieces of the lovely, like literally the specific things. So right now, currently, you mentioned one of the things is I'm a leadership coach. I've been certified in that and been teaching leadership at corporations and nonprofits and all kind of stuff like that for lots of years, 6 years at least. But I'm writing my first actual business book, and I'm merging it with actually the teachings of Neville mostly, but law of assumption based, because that's how I live my life. So it's a very true to me. So the name of the book is Leading from Consciousness, and it's basically spinning a concept that we have in leadership, which is called conscious leadership. Right? It's a way to frame things for executives and leaders to be more, conscious of their environment, awareness, and all that. So it's a very woke type of consciousness that they talk about. So what I'm doing is using that and spinning it on its head, adding the law of assumption and saying, let's get to consciousness first. And from that, all of the decisions, all of the leadership, all of the things comes from that, but it's from the leader already being attached and aware of consciousness, right? With a big C. So that's kind of my big focus right now, is that book, and there's a TEDx talk and a program and a series of workshops, and I don't ever do anything a little. So when I do something, it takes over, a certain percentage of my life, because if I love it, I love it, So that's what I'm doing
Yeah.
currently.
Let me ask you this. You know, we throw the word around. We talk about consciousness and awareness, consciousness, imagination. They become we they're used so often now, and I hear people use the term, but I can only be sure of what I mean when I say it. So when you're talking to these business people that aren't spending time, they haven't studied really, maybe not even looking into that type of thing, discovering who they really are. How do you describe consciousness to them?
So I describe consciousness to someone who has no background basically as in touch with themselves as a higher power. So not and a higher power, but as a higher power. So it's whatever they believe in, and it spans the gamut. Like I consult for major corporations across the world who have all different ideologies, backgrounds, philosophies, spiritualities, But me personally, I don't believe that it specifically matters. I have always gone off what my dad told me when I was 6 years old, and what he said about religion is, whatever helps you be a better man, do that. And I've lived by that my whole life. And I, like I said, I don't judge anyone on what they believe, what they do, throughout the week on Sunday. But if they're living what their best thing is, that's good enough for me. What I try to do is say what I've found, and let's be honest, I am a born again seeker, or maybe a recovering seeker. Um, sometimes sometimes still a seeker, right? It's hard to get that out of your blood when you're always trying to find knowledge and wisdom from without. It's hard to remember that it's actually within,
Yeah.
So but just to get back to your question, so that's what I do. I try to get them to get in touch with whatever they believe, and instead of making it an aspect of their leadership, which is what conscious leadership does, it makes it one aspect of leading people. Instead of doing that, I put the focus on the consciousness itself, right? So, if it's God, whatever that is, it could be universe for some people, right? Whatever that is, whatever makes them be a better man and feel more in touch with that piece, that's what I want them to focus on. And then what I try to do is gently reframe that towards law of assumption, which is what I personally have found has helped me the most, and what I live by personally. So they may never hear that word. They may never hear Neville Goddard's. They may never hear any of those things, but I'm using the principles nonstop every day. And I'm actually revising for them and helping them revise, as Neville would call, but we call it reframing, right? So we reframe to, once again, every time they get down to the outside, know this is you and your consciousness, it flows through you. And then from that's where we make decisions.
It's always fascinating to me incorporating that in something like this. It's easier with Feeling Twisty. I'm just saying it because I'm coming from what I've experienced, and I'm not really tailoring it to the business situation. So it's always interesting to me to hear from folks like you that take this and apply it to something like that. You mentioned born again seeker. That in the notes you sent me, that really, in fact, I highlighted that. I like that term, but I noticed you said a reformed seeker. This goes back to your childhood. You said you've always been looking for a truth. Had you always had this thing nagging at you that there's something more to this thing we call life?
Yeah, absolutely. And it appears in different ways throughout my life, as it does with all of us, right? We manifest from a resource, so it's what's in front of us. But yeah, so I mean, I've gone the religion path, but I've really always been fascinated with philosophies, all kinds of mysticism, those types of things, like from the beginning, from when I was really, really young. Obviously it starts, with like fantasy type of stuff, right? And I like to say that Yoda was actually my first guru, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Do or do not.
exactly. And of course, he had a lot of Lao Tzu teachings going through him, being as who wrote him was a Buddhist. So, but yeah, from that, like literally, that's my favorite character ever. I've, because of that, I said I do nothing small. So one thing that you don't know about me is I have a 468 piece Yoda collection
Oh, wow.
based on my age 6 to 18 fascination with Yoda and all things Star Wars. But
This
yeah,
is
so
why I
that's
brought you on. It's because of Star Wars.
exactly. See, you didn't even know. But just to say that I've always been fascinated and drawn to that. All through college, I studied, ancient religion and spirituality and all philosophies, and I've always been really drawn to that, and I use that honestly as a lot of my inspiration now. Still, you know, as much as I know it comes from within, and it actually comes from God, a higher source. It did for them too. So it's okay to listen to what they say and see if it resonates with you. Some does and some doesn't, right? So that's the
Yes,
way I
I
look at it.
I agree with you. I say that Star Wars or the Twilight series, these creative pieces, this might be controversial for some people, but are no less holy than the Bible. And
Oh,
and when we can see that things like Yoda, the dialogue written by George Lucas, uh, those are signposts. Everything's a signpost, I say, telling us who we are and where we're going. And I love when you recognize it. This is coming from me, telling me, teaching me something about myself.
yeah,
And if it involves Star Wars, if Awakening can involve Star Wars, I'm all for it. I've got 4 sons, and 2 of them are all about Star Wars. They're adults. My oldest son has a room. His computer room, his gaming room, is Star Wars, wall to
nice.
wall, floor to ceiling. And after this, I want you to send me. I need to see video or pictures of your
Sure,
collection.
absolutely.
So let's go back to this childhood, this drive, and I think others can identify with you on that. This something scratching at the back of your head, the back of your mind, like there's more to this. Uh, how did this play out for you? This discovery.
Well, like I said, from the beginning, it's always been running in the background, right? It's so and you'll see, and this is why from your beginning how we talked about how it seems like a meandering adventurous life. It really isn't. It's just a thousand roots all running
Mm-hmm.
parallel and intertwined forever, from 0 to 50. um, so yeah, it's always been running. Like I said, all along, all through college, all of that. And it basically eventually led me to do what I'm doing now, in a manner of speaking, along with all of those other things that intertwine. You know, um, I don't know exactly how far along the timeline you want me to get, but uh,
Hey,
in
it's your
short,
story. It's your
it's
story, Tony, not
in
mine.
short, I mean, I I believe that seeking is what led me to where I eventually work at Hay House as a facilitator. Hay House Publishing, which has
Hmm.
Wayne Dyer, Louise Hay, Dr. Joe Dispenza, all those people that I get to work with. It led me to that, and in a weird way, because I got invited to a writers conference as a plus one. Not even that I was thinking about writing,
Hmm.
right? I got invited. I ended up on Maui. Had no idea that Dr. Dyer had an estate on Maui. So he was there at the writers convention. A few of us got invited back to his place, and we clicked immediately. And like literally within that 4 day retreat that we were there, I became a student of Dr. Dyer, like in a physical sense. He became my mentor, and I worked with him for like the last 10 months of his life, as
Ah.
he had had his cancer in remission and all
Hmm.
of that. But anyway, so I mean, it led to that, and that led to Mind Valley, which is kind of the new age version of that. I don't know if people know about Mind Valley, but it's the largest online conscious um, training center. They call it a university in the whole
Oh,
world. It's the you know what I mean. It's amazing. Like all of the authors that I spoke of, and then some, they all publish their programs with Mind Valley. So they're doing constant work, and so I work with them and fly all over the world doing facilitation for those, for those authors and publishers as well. But all of it is because of this, right? I mean, I've got to meet Esther Hicks from Abraham fame. I've got, you know what I mean? All of these people. I was a facilitator for Esther for 9 months of all of her live programs. So I got to see all of that. And whether you believe in, those type of things or not, from my perspective, that's just a different version of the same thing. They're getting downloads from somewhere, and you get to believe in the truth of the pieces that you want to, you know?
right.
Um, so yeah, it's served me my whole life, and it's like the light. You know what I mean? Like to me, it is what makes it interesting, and it is what weaves everything together, and keeps me in touch with my consciousness in these different ways.
I've said all those credentials. I listed those at the beginning of this, and you've done a lot and you're doing a lot, but none of that is why I asked you to be on here. I asked you to be on here because we got to know each other really just online through
Yeah,
Facebook and Instagram. It's the light that you shine, and the way I feel about that. That's why you're here. That's why I wanted you on here. Uh, if you, I love playing this game. I do this uh, often, uh, sometimes, not as often as I used to, but uh, if you, for a moment, strip away anything you learned from Wayne Dyer and your experiences with Esther Hicks, and uh, 2020, Neville Goddard, Feeling Twisty podcast, strip away everything that you've thought you've relied on. Well, and I do this myself, when it's a fun game. Let go of that. Like, well, they said this. Let go of all of that. Let go of all the things you've done, all the hats you've worn. What's here and what's right now? Who's here for you? When you can strip away anything you think you've discovered or found outside of you. I'll let you answer.
yeah. I mean, really, it all comes down to that, right? I am, and you are an individuation of God. That's it.
Is it?
That,
Go ahead.
that's what I believe. I believe that I'm like a, this finger on the many hands of God or whatever, and um, I'm allowing God to experience something in a different way based on all of the things that you know, all of the things and places. Like I'm not at war with outside like a lot of people are.
Hmm.
I'm not at war with it. It has its place, and I believe, like how I read Neville, he believed that we were purposely put here in these situations to experience different things, and that's why there are so many of us, right? So many versions. It's like we're constantly, experiencing different experiences because we're coming from our own backgrounds and our own, even the teachers and the things that we think we have are not teachers. They're reminders, like you said, signposts, right? It's really a reminder. And the only things you really ever pick up, and this is one thing that they teach in coaching, but they have no idea how conscious it is. The only things you really pick up are the things you resonate with, ever. You're not really ever taught anything. You're only reminded of things, right? And the only things you ever take on are the things you take on as your identity, are things that resonate with you.
Yeah, I agree. That little activity, the first time I did that, I had noticed, and this is just a personal thing, that I'd gotten to a point where I was hanging on to Neville Goddard. Well, he said this.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would notice when things were different than that. Well, hold on. But Neville said this. It has to be this way. And I was turning it into another religion. I took the dogma, this dogmatic approach to Christianity that I had growing up, and then applied the same dogmatic idealism to Neville Goddard. Taking everything he said. Well, he said it has to be this, so it has to be this way. You know, Neville Goddard in one lecture said, "Don't you dare doubt." Oh shit! What do I doubted? Oh, he said, "Don't you dare doubt."
Yeah.
I'm totally fucked. You know, and I started feeling that same guilt, the
Yeah.
sinner's guilt that I had growing up in church, and that was all on me. I did that. I
Yeah.
was turning him into this teacher into something greater than I am.
Yeah. This is one thing
And
I say, Mike, not to cut
uh-huh.
you off, but this is one thing I think it's pertinent. It's not what you read, it's how you read it. And you read from your perspective, and your perspective changes, and it can change, and you can consciously change it all the time, but it's always changing anyway. One quote. So I've written 5 books so far, right? This is the newest one we're talking about, but I wrote a book with 2020. I'm writing a memoir for my first 50 years right now. But in all of my books so far, I put this quote in there specifically because I believe this will help more people than anything, at least of the things that I've come to in life. I mean, there's, there are great things you can think of, but this is my thing, right? Every single moment is a manifestation in and of itself and a manifestation in the becoming. Every single moment.
I like
So
that.
not every single manifestation, every single moment is its own manifestation. So it's you could talk about it as a bridge, like Neville would. You could talk about it as a middle. You know what I mean? But those are all terms. Those are all labels. Literally, you are reinventing yourself every moment. And then to get back to what I said originally, what would you love? Give life to that lovely. And the
Yeah.
more times you remember to do that, the more true you are to all of that. You don't get stuck and I was supposed to do this. Oh, I was supposed to do this. You know what I mean? It's actually that meandering stream of like what my life is. That's why, because I remember to ask myself that question a lot. And and we all get stuck at some point where we forget. But then
Yeah.
when you do that, it just reframes everything for you.
Yeah. Exactly. And what I was getting at, that the scary moment for me, and I think everybody should do this, that has been studying whatever manifesting teacher on consciousness, risk taking a moment and thinking, what if they're wrong? What if everything I've heard from everybody else is wrong? And when I first did that, when I noticed I was holding on to Neville's like a religion, I said that to myself. What if he's wrong? And then it scared me. And then that's when I noticed, okay, I need to let that shit go. Because
Because it scared you, right?
right, exactly. Because
The
Neville
reaction.
never was here. Neville is a voice I've heard, but the only one right here, right now, is the one imagining himself to be Mike. And
Yep.
everything else is a reflection of me. And it's for me, it was like jumping off a cliff. It was a letting go of every teacher, a reliance on anything anybody else said. No more, well, Neville says this. Nope. I don't care what Neville said. I don't care what Wayne Dyer said, or Esther Hicks, or all the other teachers. I don't care what they taught me in church. I can only know what I experience. My only experience is my experience. So that was a very freeing thing for me. I just wanted to get out. It's a fun activity, a fun thing for me to do from time to time when I notice I'm holding on to something. Anyway,
Yeah,
back to
absolutely.
Tony.
Yeah,
So
I mean, but that fits in perfect, Mike, because that literally takes it all the way back to what my dad said. Whatever makes you a better man, right? Whatever it is. And that's the thing too. Like, once again, it's not what you read, it's how you read it.
yeah,
We Neville's stuff is in print or in recording, whatever. All we know is one facet of what he was even trying to say, and we filter that through what we know.
right.
So you know what I mean. I just find it's a lot easier to not be at war with any of that
Mm,
stuff. Pick up once again what resonates with you, whether it's Yoda, Wayne Dyer, Esther Hicks from some other medium kind of source,
or feeling
Edgar
twisty.
Casey. I don't care what it is. If it feels right to you, you know what I mean, and it fits
Yeah,
in with your overall philosophy at that moment, and it can serve you. Okay.
exactly. I have a friend. I mentioned him with when I had Alessandra and Grant on, and I'll get messages from people. How do you do this? How do you, and I remind him, I'm not a life coach. I'm sharing with you my experiences, and what I do, the way I do things, it might be different. You can't go off of what this person, they do it this way. You can try it, but the
Yeah.
worst thing you can do is compare yourself to someone else and look at
Yeah.
them and then, well, why am I not getting it like that?
Yeah.
And comparison is probably one of the most damaging things that can happen to you when you're locked into that, because none of that shit matters.
Yeah. It's a constant back and forth balance, right? You know what I mean? And this is the same in everything. And I'll bring it back to what I do on a daily basis, which is business. And why I always try to reframe back to the law of assumption and to get CEOs and visionaries to think from instead of to. Because if not, you'll get stuck in strategy,
Mm-hmm.
data. You know what I mean? And it's
Mm-hmm.
literally the same thing as Neville calls a middle, right? So you try to empower and manifest a middle using a human side instead of a divinity side, right? So your human side wants to say if and then, like a computer,
Right. Flow
because that
chart.
worked for Mike when he built his business. He put in $300,000 on marketing, 200. You know what I mean? This. So therefore, that's the blueprint. That's the pattern. That's how it works. Couldn't be farther from the truth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That could lead anywhere. Literally, it could lead straight to failure. You could do the exact same thing, being a different person in a different time. I mean, everything is different, always. Every single thing is a manifestation in and of itself, and a manifestation in the becoming. And if you extrapolate that to every single thing, like I said, everything is different in every single moment. So how could you even expect that it works like that?
Right. Right. Exactly. You're looking at things said a decade ago or 50 years ago, or somebody's post.
Yeah.
And I tell people all the time, look, you're looking at a collection of pixels on a screen, and you're hearing this story or reading this story that you're giving 100% faith to. Well, this is there, so that really happened, and it was that easy for them. And it goes back to what you just said. You got to let go of it having to be that way. I call it's micromanagement. You go,
It
well,
is.
what about this? And I got to do this, and I got to move them here, and then I got to do this, and then, oh shit, I didn't do a session at lunch. I usually do a session. I just screwed up my day, or I woke up late. I didn't do my session in bed. I'm
Mm-hmm.
screwed. We get into this.
It
because
is
we hear other people do it and we think, well, I'm failing because I'm not doing it like that. But really, like you said, you're manifesting on the fly. This,
all the
it's
time.
you. Are you a fan of Star Trek,
Of
the
course.
Next Generation, the
Oh,
holodeck? It's
oh,
all. It seems like it's vast and huge. It's all right here, and everything. As you move, it's formed around you,
yeah,
and you can never not be manifesting. You're
yep.
always manifesting, and it's your decision to. Am I going to
It's so
not
interesting.
enjoy this moment?
I actually just went through this, Mike, with the client, like who is spiritual and conscious, right? Which sometimes gets in their way because what does that mean to them? Like we started out with, right? What's God and who are you? And that whole thing, you know. But so we talked about, she kept going back to manifesting, manifesting, manifesting. I'm like, okay, cool. You're like making this manifesting thing into be some mystical experience. What does that even mean? What does manifesting mean to you? And she, this and that, and in touch with my higher power, and da 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 da. So I just had to remind her, in touch with your higher power. When are you not in touch with your higher power? Are you not your higher power? And so then I pulled out the Merriam-Webster dictionary and looked up the word manifest, and it means to make the outward visible. It's
Yeah.
literally as within, so without. That word manifest. And we are doing it all the time if you know that everything is from within.
Yeah.
You know,
I
and
totally agree with you.
like I said, even people who don't remember it all the time. They
Oh,
still,
sure.
you get stuck in this, this earthly human existence.
Right.
And
I
instead of
think
using it as the tool it is, we kind of use it the opposite, at war with ourselves about it.
yeah. I I think when someone's diving into teachers and the manifesting industry and I said this recently on an episode, just because they have a snazzy website and they're great at creating content on their
Mm-hmm.
Instagram doesn't mean they know more than you do.
Nope.
You can't put your faith in something outside of you. The good teachers uh, and mentors and coaches put it all back on you,
Yep.
and that's what it sounds like you're doing.
Absolutely.
It's you are the source, and and that's the good judge of uh, if somebody that's worth following, giving a listen to. If they're putting it on them, you need me. You're not going to be successful unless you have me
Yeah.
in your life. I would turn them off, block them, unfollow them. But when
Yeah.
that person shines a light like you do, I say go for it. Tony, we're running close to out of time, but I want to get to a little bit more about you.
Sure.
It, if you, and I'm going to limit you to the most important thing. What's the most important message you want those in the Feeling Twisty family to hear about you and about them?
Um, what I would like to say about me is I am an expression of you. So what I would like to say about them is they are God and they can create me in any manner they'd like, just like they can create Mike and they can create anything, right? So that's what I would like to say. As for me and what I'm doing here as God myself, I love everybody, and I just want to be able to use my experiences to help people be able to live a bigger life. Literally, that's what I do. Um, whether it's through the business stuff that I do, or I have a whole nother side. I have tons of other sides, like you said, but
That's another
but
episode.
I have a more spiritual side of what I do, which is called. I have a whole channel and a podcast called Inspirate, NSPR8,
That's right.
and
We didn't
through
even get to
that,
that. Go ahead.
yeah, and through that, that's where I do all this stuff with ancient wisdom like Rumi and Lao Tzu and all of that, as well as like modern teachers and all of that. And I try to help people see it's about this was their experience. What can you take from that experience for your experience? You don't adopt someone's experience. You just learn from what they did, like any book or anything, right? Once again, what does it resonate with you? So that's what I try to do in all levels. Um, you know, and there's so many. I mean, life is life, and it's what you make it. Um, one of my favorite things to think about and kind of talk to people about is creation, because I only really deal with creatives, and I'm in the process of right now of planning a creative visionary retreat in Hawaii and doing all this stuff
Ooh.
with creatives, right? But Neville says, and I believe this 100%, that creation is finished.
Yeah.
Right? So when you talk about creating reality, people get it mixed up. They think we are creating, and that's the action that we're doing, is creating. It's not. It's reality is the action. What are we making real in our life? What are we choosing out of the made creation to put in here that we make real? Right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I'm doing. We didn't really get to it in this episode, but I mean, I retired myself after 30 years of operations in restaurant management and nonprofit management and doing all. I retired myself from all operations. And for the last 9 months, I've only been doing a project called What Would You Love?
Ooh.
And I picked out 10 basically entrepreneurs, people that I've met, heard of, know from the internet, whatever. And actually, I interviewed like 30 of them. You were one, but you were going on vacation, or you were taking a little away from your
Oh.
podcast. So this is how long ago
Wow.
I started thinking. Almost a year ago, I think
Wow.
you
Yeah.
stopped. So, um, but basically, I interviewed like 30 entrepreneurs and people that I thought were really creative visionaries doing things that I believed in, and I thought that I could probably help. My experience could help. What would you love? And literally, once I weeded it down to 10 people, and so I'm working with people, tons of people that you guys would all know, and probably some people that you don't know that you will, because it's about to be uh, an amazing 2024 and 25.
Ooh.
But literally,
Where are
I'm
we going to
trying.
hear? When are we going to hear this or see this? When is this coming out?
It's coming out nonstop. It's manifesting all the time, because I'm working with 10 people. And so whatever their vision was, so it might be this retreat that I mentioned before,
Ah. Okay.
right? So there's a creative visionary retreat that I'm in partnership with to create
Is is
with
Jerry part of
someone.
this?
Jerry is my partner in that, and Jerry's brother.
Jerry.
Yep. So
J
we are
Man.
creating that. So he is one of the entrepreneurs that I love the stuff that he does. I just,
Yeah.
on the business side, I thought I might be able to give him some pointers and some help. And so we're working on that. I'm working with 9 other people. Some of them I don't want to say yet because it's not
Sure.
in process, but through the Inspirate thing, I'm working with a partner there. And when I say partner, it's not like I'm literally in physical partnership. We've started businesses around this stuff.
Oh wow.
This is like real life, you know what I mean? Envisioning, empowering, and embodying. Who do you want to be? What would you
Hmm.
love? Give life to the lovely. And I
So
challenge them to ask themselves that nonstop.
how can one keep track of this? Those who don't know you, don't follow you, give us the information on where to find you online and how to tap into this to keep, for those that want to get involved.
Sure. Well, the easiest way to get a hold of me is at my website, probably, which is just TonyDoyleInspires.com. My email is td@TonyDoyleInspires.com. But a majority of the time, you'll find me on Facebook. I mean, I post on Instagram. I've got a LinkedIn. I've got all that stuff. But I hang out at Facebook most of the time. I post at Facebook most of the time. So that's the easiest way. Um, And you can inbox me all the time. Like I said, I have tons of business programs that help businesses. I have the whole Inspirate project, which we're actually getting ready to roll out a brand new book club in April with my
Oh, cool.
partner there also, his name is Alayemi, and we're working on that. Um, it's funny, just one quick story. I know we've got to wrap it
That's
up,
fine.
but
Go ahead.
one of the entrepreneurs that I picked after talking to, and weeded it down, I'm actually only working with 9 now, and this is why. One of the ones that I picked and we had started working together, we actually fell in love.
Oh, what?
Yeah. So, and it's an amazing story all in of itself.
Wow.
Like, we don't have time to go into the whole thing, but neither one of us were looking for that. In fact, we were specifically looking for something else, business related. She is also a coach and a sales executive for a huge corporation. Um, and
That's
yeah, we,
okay. I'm going to have you on because that's a love episode, and
yeah,
that deserves its own episode. So will you come back on soon? Because that's a great story.
yeah, it
Every
is. It's
We're all looking. Love is a biggie.
Yeah.
That's a big
And
one.
this is that
For people.
meandering that I'm talking about, right? What would
Yeah,
you love? Give life to the lovely.
yeah. I want to
We
hear
gave
that.
life to a
So,
business thing,
uh,
and because of that, you know what I mean?
yeah,
And yeah, so it's
yeah.
amazing, but
I'm gonna get you back on for that.
awesome.
So, real quick, TonyDoyleInspires.com, and then
That's it.
find Tony Doyle on Facebook. Did I
Yep,
get that right?
that's correct. I'm mostly Tony Doyle on Facebook, but yeah,
Tony, it was great having you on. This is a treat for me, and I look forward to having you on more often and getting to know you
yeah,
and letting those in the Twisty family get to know you as well. Thanks for being
absolutely.
here.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. And thank you for tuning into another episode of Feeling Twisty. I love you.